"I just want to see my balance," said the boy in simple clothes, ignored by everyone in the bank lobby. The manager laughed, the executives mocked him, and even the security guard made fun of him. But when the account number was entered, the system froze, and the room fell silent. On the screen there weren't just frozen billions, there was also the secret that would throw many powerful people into panic. Light May rain was falling on Fifth Avenue when Gabriel got off the bus. He was 15, but his gaze held a seriousness that didn't match his age. His hands clutched a transparent folder against his chest, protecting the papers from the splashes that insisted on soaking his worn-out sneakers. He stopped at the corner, observing the mirrored glass building that rose imposingly on the other side of the street. This was it. The International Financial Center, a place he only knew from pictures on the internet. He took a deep breath and crossed the avenue, dodging the impatiently advancing cars. His simple clothes, faded jeans, and a blue knit shirt contrasted with the surrounding environment. Executives in suits crossed the sidewalk with hurried steps, talking on the phone, looking at the screens of expensive cell phones. No one paid attention to him, or almost no one. As he pushed through the revolving glass door, Gabriel felt the weight of the stairs. The lobby was huge, with light marble floors and an immense chandelier on the ceiling. Well-dressed employees circulated with clipboards and tablets. There was a reception desk straight ahead, with 3 receptionists typing intently. Gabriel walked over, feeling his legs tremble slightly. It wasn't fear, it was anxiety, and the certainty that after this moment, nothing would ever be the same. A blonde receptionist, with perfect red nails, looked up and scanned him from head to toe. Her professional smile faltered for an instant. Gabriel noticed. He was used to that kind of look. The silent judgment, the hasty conclusion that he didn't belong in that place. "Good morning," he said, his voice firm despite the insecurity he felt inside. "I need to speak with the manager. It's about an account." The woman raised an eyebrow. "An account? Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I have the necessary documents." Gabriel opened the folder and took out an envelope. Inside was a letterhead paper, yellowed with age, with an account number handwritten in blue ink. There was also a signed authorization and a small worn-out ID card. He placed everything on the counter, organizing the papers carefully. The receptionist took the documents and examined them skeptically. She looked at Gabriel again, this time with a mix of suspicion and curiosity. "Wait a moment," she said, getting up and heading to a room in the back. Gabriel stood, there waiting as other people passed by him. A well-dressed elderly couple was discussing investments. A woman in high heels spoke English on the phone. 2 security guards watched from the other side of the lobby. He felt out of place, as if he were invading a world that wasn't his. But he had a reason to be there, a reason he had been carrying alone for weeks. Minutes later, the receptionist returned, accompanied by a middle-aged man with graying hair combed back, wearing an impeccable gray suit. He held the documents and looked at Gabriel with an expression that mixed curiosity and impatience. "Good morning, young man. I'm Marcus Taylor, Special Accounts Manager. The receptionist informed me that you're here to discuss a bank transaction. May I ask what this is about?" Gabriel looked him in the eye without wavering. "It's an account that has been frozen for 10 years. It was left to me. I have the authorization and the documentation." Marcus frowned and examined the papers again. "Left to you? How old are you?" 15. The manager let out a long sigh as if he were wasting time on something insignificant. "Look, kid, I don't know who gave you these papers, but transactions of this type require the presence of a legal guardian, legal validation, and most importantly, proof that the account actually exists. Do you have any idea what you're asking for?" "I do," Gabriel replied, his voice firmer now. "And I know the account exists. It was created by my grandfather, Vincent Alistair Carter." The name echoed in the lobby, as if it had been spoken loud and clear, although Gabriel had used a normal tone. Marcus Taylor stopped flipping through the papers and slowly raised his eyes. His expression changed. The impatience gave way to something different, surprise or perhaps apprehension. "Vincent Carter," he repeated, his voice low. "Are you serious?" "I am." Marcus looked around, as if checking who else might have heard. "Come with me," he said, gesturing for Gabriel to follow him. "Let's talk somewhere more private." Gabriel picked up his folder and followed the manager down a side corridor. They passed by meeting rooms with glass walls, where executives discussed charts and projections. They went up 2 flights of stairs and entered a small room with a dark wooden table and 4 upholstered chairs. Marcus closed the door behind him and indicated a chair for Gabriel. "Sit here. I'll need to check a few things in the system. This might take a while." "No problem." Marcus turned on a computer built into the table and started typing. Gabriel watched the screen's reflection in the manager's glasses, seeing numbers and codes flash by quickly. The silence in the room was thick. The only sound was the clicking of the keys and the low hum of the air conditioning. After a few minutes, Marcus stopped typing. He remained motionless, his eyes fixed on the screen as if he couldn't believe what he was reading. Gabriel noticed the change in his breathing. Something had been found. "This isn't possible," the manager muttered, more to himself than to Gabriel. "What isn't possible?" Marcus turned the computer to the side, but didn't show the screen. He took off his glasses, rubbed his eyes, and put them back on. "Kid, tell me something. Who sent you here?" "Nobody sent me. I came because I received these documents 3 weeks ago. They were left for me." "Left by whom?" "By someone who took care of me my whole life." Gabriel didn't want to give too many details. Not yet. Not to this man who minutes ago had treated him like an inconvenience, but he knew he would have to talk, eventually, because the truth always came out, whether you wanted it to or not. Marcus took a deep breath and placed his hands on the table. "Look, Gabriel, that's your name, right? I don't know what you know about this account, but I'm going to tell you something. What's here in the system isn't a common account. It's a complex asset structure, legally frozen for exactly 10 years by express order of the account holder. According to the records, this account can only be accessed in the presence of the legal heir with authenticated documentation and identity validation, and the heir, as it states, is a minor. You." Gabriel said nothing. He just nodded. "Do you have any idea what this means? What could be triggered by unfreezing this account?" "I have an idea," Gabriel answered, "but I know there's still a lot I don't know. That's why I'm here." Marcus stood up and went to the window. From up there, you could see all of Fifth Avenue, with its tall buildings, heavy traffic, and the incessant coming and going of people. He stood there for a few seconds as if making a difficult decision, then he turned around. "I'm going to have to activate the security protocol. This will involve other people, superiors, lawyers, auditors. Are you prepared for that?" "I am." Marcus nodded and picked up the phone on the table. He dialed an internal extension and waited. "Hello, Ms. Foster. It's Marcus Taylor. I need you to come to the 5th floor meeting room immediately. We have a level 3 situation. Yes, level 3, confirmed." He hung up and looked at Gabriel. "Don't leave this room. Don't talk to anyone and don't touch anything, understood?" "Understood." Marcus left the room, leaving Gabriel alone. The silence returned, but it was different now. There was a tension in the air, an expectation that something big was about to happen. Gabriel looked out the window, watching the city move below. He thought about everything that had brought him here. The sleepless nights, the doubts, the weight of the choices he still had to make. He didn't know for sure what he expected to find, but he knew he couldn't go back, not now. 10 minutes later, the door opened. 3 people entered. Marcus, a woman with black hair tied in a severe bun, wearing an impeccable beige suit, and an older man with a grey beard carrying a leather briefcase. The woman introduced herself as Beatrice Foster, the bank's legal director. The man was Paul Harris, an internal auditor. "Gabriel," Beatrice said, sitting across from him. "Let's get straight to the point. The documents you brought have been preliminarily validated. The signature matches the records we have on file. However, we need a more detailed biometric and documentary confirmation before we proceed. Did you bring your birth certificate?" "I did," Gabriel replied, opening his folder again and handing her the document. Beatrice examined the certificate carefully. She compared it with the papers Marcus had brought and nodded to Paul Harris, who began typing on a tablet. The room fell silent for a few minutes, with only the sound of the keys and the occasional turning of pages. "It's correct," Paul Harris confirmed. "The parentage is in order. Vincent Alastair Carter is the paternal grandfather. The mother died in childbirth. The father disappeared 10 years ago. Gabriel felt a tightness in his chest. Hearing it said out loud, so directly, always hurt. He knew the story. He knew his father had vanished when he was just 5 years old. He knew that since then, he had been raised by someone he loved like a mother, even though she wasn't. Maria, the woman who took him in, who worked double shifts to put food on the table, who never denied him affection even when life was hard. Beatrice continued. According to the records, Vincent Carter passed away 9 years ago, but he left express instructions that the account remain frozen until the legal heir, that is you, turned 15 and presented himself with the correct documentation. This account is not just a savings account, Gabriel. It's a structured portfolio. Real estate, stocks, corporate shares, international funds. A complex network of assets that was legally protected to prevent misappropriation. Gabriel swallowed hard. How much? He asked, his voice almost a whisper. Beatrice and Paul Harris exchanged glances. Marcus crossed his arms, leaning back in his chair. It was Beatrice who answered. We cannot disclose the exact amount at this time, but I can tell you that it is significant, very significant. Significant enough to change the lives of several generations, Paul Harris added. Gabriel felt the floor disappear for a moment. He knew there was something important in that inheritance, but he never imagined it could be so big, so complex, so dangerous. Why did my grandfather do this? Why not leave everything simpler? Beatrice sighed. Because he knew the risks. Vincent Carter was a brilliant man, but he was also cautious. He accumulated wealth ethically, but he knew there were people around who didn't share the same values. So he created layers of protection, legal firewalls, access restrictions, all to ensure that when the right time came, the rightful heir would have access to what was his by right, without interference, without manipulation. And the right time is now, Gabriel said, more a statement than a question. Apparently, yes. At that moment, the door opened again. This time, no one knocked. A woman rushed in, her face pale, her eyes wide. She wore a simple dress of light fabric, her brown hair disheveled, as if she had just left home in a hurry. Gabriel recognized her immediately. His heart pounded. Maria. She stopped in the middle of the room, looking at him with a mixture of relief and panic. Gabriel, what are you doing here? Maria, how did you... I received an alert. Your name appeared in the bank's security system. I have access to the alerts because I was registered as a temporary guardian years ago. Gabriel, you shouldn't be here. Beatrice stood up. Ma'am, you are? Maria Evans. I've taken care of Gabriel since he was 5. And what is your relationship with Vincent Carter? Maria hesitated. She looked at Gabriel, then at the bank executives. I was his employee. I worked at the family home for many years. When everything happened, I assumed guardianship of Gabriel by court order. Everything happened, Beatrice repeated, crossing her arms. Could you be more specific? Maria took a deep breath, trying to control her trembling voice. Vincent Carter set up this financial structure because he knew there was danger. He knew that the fortune attracted the wrong kind of attention, and he was right, because it was because of this fortune that Gabriel's father disappeared. The silence in the room was absolute. Gabriel felt his blood run cold. He knew something had happened to his father, but no one had ever spoken openly about it. Maria always avoided the subject, deflecting the conversation with vague excuses. Now, for the first time, she was saying something different. What do you mean, disappeared? Gabriel asked, his voice hoarse. Maria looked at him with teary eyes. Gabriel, I've spent 10 years trying to protect you from this truth. I thought if you didn't know, you'd be safe, but now I realize that hiding it solves nothing. Your father didn't abandon the family. He didn't run away. He disappeared because he was forced to, because there were people who wanted to take what wasn't theirs, and he made a choice, the choice to protect you. Gabriel felt his legs weaken. He held onto the table, trying to process what he was hearing. Protect me from whom? From people who believe they are entitled to this fortune. From companies that did business with Vincent and thought they deserved more than they received. From individuals who take advantage of legal loopholes to claim inheritances that don't belong to them. Beatrice intervened. Mrs. Evans, are you saying there were attempts of undue appropriation of Vincent Carter's assets? I'm saying there was much more than attempts. At that moment, the door opened a third time. And what happened next left everyone in the room in shock. A man walked in. He was unshaven, with long, disheveled hair, wearing simple, worn-out clothes. But his eyes, Gabriel recognized those eyes, because they were the same ones he saw every morning in the mirror. The man looked at Gabriel, and for the first time in 10 years, father and son met. Edward Carter wasn't dead. He was here. Maria let out a muffled cry and brought her hands to her mouth. Beatrice, Marcus, and Paul Harris stood up immediately, tense, not knowing how to react. Gabriel, for his part, was frozen, unable to move, to speak, to breathe. "Edward," Maria whispered, her voice broken. "How did you—" "I had to come back," he said, his voice hoarse, filled with emotion. "When I heard Gabriel had come here, that he had activated the account, I had no choice. I couldn't let him go through this alone. Not again." He took a step forward, but stopped when he saw Gabriel flinch. The boy was in a state of shock. All the questions he had kept inside for years seemed to want to come out at once, but none could form a complete sentence. "Gabriel," Edward began, and his voice broke. "I know I have no right to be here. I know I abandoned you. But you have to understand it wasn't because I wanted to. It was because it was the only way to keep you alive." "Keep me alive?" Gabriel managed to say, but his voice was thin, frightened. "What are you talking about?" Edward looked at Maria, who had tears streaming down her face. She nodded, as if giving him permission to continue. Edward took a deep breath and began to speak, each word heavy with pain and regret. When Vincent passed away, he left the fortune protected. But he also left enemies, people who thought they were entitled to a part of it. One company in particular, connected to old family business, tried to contest the will. They tried to bribe judges, manipulate documents, create legal loopholes. Vincent knew this would happen, that's why he created such a complex system. But these people didn't give up, and when they realized I was next in line, they made me an offer. Either I gave up the inheritance, transferring everything to them, or you would be used as leverage. Gabriel felt the world spin. Maria stepped forward and held Edward's arm as if she needed support. Beatrice, who was observing everything with professional attention, signaled to Paul Harris, who began to quickly take notes on everything that was being said. "So I did the only thing I could do. I disappeared. I pretended I had abandoned the family. I let them think I was a coward, a failure, someone who couldn't handle the pressure and ran away. But in reality, I was hidden. Vincent, before he passed, had created a protection network for extreme cases, a confidential network that took me out of the state, gave me a temporary new identity, kept me alive and away until you turned 15. Because Vincent knew that when you reached that age, you could claim the inheritance with full legal protection, and I could come back." Gabriel felt tears roll down his face uncontrollably. 10 years. For 10 years he believed he had been abandoned. 10 years carrying the pain of thinking he hadn't been enough for his father to stay. And now he discovered it was all a lie. Or rather, that the truth was much worse than any lie. Maria approached Gabriel and tried to touch his shoulder, but he pulled away. "You knew," he said, his voice thick with hurt. "You always knew." "I knew," Maria admitted, the tears now falling freely. "But it was the only way to protect you, Gabriel. If you knew, you might have tried to look for him, you might have said something, and that would have put you at risk. I had to choose between telling you the truth and keeping you safe. And I chose to keep you safe." Gabriel didn't know what to feel. Anger, relief, confusion, pain, all at once. Mixed, heavy, unbearable. He looked at Edward, who was just a few feet away but seemed a lifetime away. Beatrice broke the silence. "Mr. Edward Carter, I presume. I'll need documentation to confirm your identity, and I will contact our legal department immediately. This situation goes beyond any standard protocol." "I have the documentation," Edward said, pulling an envelope from inside his jacket. "And I also have this." He handed the envelope to Beatrice. Inside were authenticated documents, records of protected transactions, and a small golden key. Beatrice examined everything carefully and then looked at Paul Harris. "Activate the asset emergency protocol," she said, "and summon the international audit team. This goes far beyond what we imagined." Paul Harris left the room hastily. Marcus remained, watching everything with a grave expression. Maria sat down in one of the chairs, exhausted. Edward stood looking at Gabriel, waiting for some reaction. Any reaction. But Gabriel remained silent. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and feelings he couldn't organize. He had come here looking for answers, and now he had more questions than ever. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sun was beginning to appear between the clouds, casting rays of light over the city. But inside that room, the storm was just beginning. 2 hours had passed since Edward entered that room, 2 hours that felt like an eternity. Gabriel was sitting in a chair, staring into space, trying to process everything he had heard. His father was alive. His entire life had been built on a lie meant to protect him, and now before him was the raw, heavy, undeniable truth. The room had transformed into a makeshift operations center. Beatrice was on the phone with external lawyers, confirming protocols and verifying documentation. Marcus was on another line, contacting superiors and reporting the situation. Maria remained seated next to Gabriel, but he wouldn't look at her, he couldn't. Edward was leaning against the opposite wall, his eyes fixed on his son, waiting for a sign, a word, anything. One of the phones rang, and Beatrice answered. "Yes, I understand. Bring them here immediately." She hung up and looked at the others. "The external counsel is on her way. She was automatically assigned by a contractual clause left by Vincent Carter. According to the terms, any activation of the account would trigger her mandatory presence." Gabriel looked up. "A lawyer?" "Yes. Apparently Vincent left nothing to chance. He foresaw this moment would come and prepared a complete legal protection structure. The lawyer will bring documents that can only be accessed after confirming the identity of everyone involved." Minutes later, the door opened, and a woman of about 50 entered with grey hair cut in a modern style, thin-framed glasses, and a posture that showed years of experience. She carried a black leather briefcase and greeted Beatrice with a professional nod. "Lucy Mendez, specialist in inheritance and estate law. I was hired by Vincent Carter 12 years ago to act as the legal guardian of the sensitive documentation related to this inheritance." She looked around the room, analyzing each person present. "I presume the heir is this young man?" Gabriel nodded. Lucy walked over to him and extended her hand. "It's a pleasure, Gabriel. I worked with your grandfather for many years. He was an exceptional man, and he prepared all of this with you in mind." Gabriel shook her hand, feeling the firmness of her grip. Lucy opened the briefcase on the table and took out a series of sealed envelopes, each with a number and an inscription. Beatrice and Marcus watched attentively. Edward took a step forward, interested, but Lucy raised her hand in a gesture to pause. "Before we proceed, I need to confirm the identities of everyone present. Gabriel Carter, son of Edward Carter, and grandson of Vincent Carter. Edward Carter, son of Vincent Carter and father of Gabriel. Maria Evans, Gabriel's temporary legal guardian. Is this all correct?" Everyone confirmed. Lucy then took out a small digital device from her briefcase, something like a tablet but with a different screen. "It's a biometric scanner," she explained. "Vincent left digital and iris samples of everyone involved. We need to confirm before opening the documents." One by one, Edward, Gabriel, and Maria underwent the verification. The device emitted a confirmation sound with each successful scan. Lucy nodded, satisfied. "Perfect. Now we can proceed." She opened the first envelope and took out a handwritten letter, written on quality paper, in Vincent's elegant handwriting. Lucy began to read aloud. "To my beloved grandson, Gabriel, if you are hearing this letter, it means the moment I both feared and prepared for has arrived. The time has come for you to know the truth about your family, about the fortune I leave to you, and about the challenges that lie ahead. But before I talk about money, I need to talk about principles." Gabriel felt a lump in his throat. Lucy's voice was firm, but Vincent's words echoed in the room with an almost palpable presence, as if the old man were there speaking directly to him. The letter continued. I built this fortune with hard work, honesty, and a vision for the future. I never stole, I never cheated, I never took advantage of the weak. And it was precisely for this reason that I made enemies, because in a world where many believe the end justifies the means, I insisted on upholding my values, and that came at a price your father paid, a price I feared you might also have to pay. Edward lowered his head, his fists clenched. Maria wiped away the tears that kept falling. That is why I created layers of protection, Lucy continued reading. Legal firewalls, international structures, all to ensure that when you turned 15, you could access what is yours without external interference. But I also left you a choice, because I believe that true power is not in having money, but in knowing what to do with it. And that choice, my grandson, is yours alone to make. Lucy paused and looked at Gabriel. The next part is a video. Vincent recorded it, but according to the instructions, it can only be played after this letter is read in its entirety. Do you wish for me to continue? Gabriel nodded. Please. Lucy resumed reading. Gabriel, when you gain access to this fortune, you will discover that it is vast. Properties in different states, shares in companies, international funds, investments that have grown over the years. All of this is yours. But with it come responsibilities and risks, because there are people who believe they are entitled to this fortune, people who will not hesitate to try to manipulate you, deceive you, or even threaten you. Therefore, I have left you with 3 choices. Gabriel leaned forward, attentive. Lucy continued. First choice, you can access the entire fortune immediately, assuming full control of the assets. This will give you power and autonomy, but it will also put you at risk, because by publicly becoming the owner of this fortune, you will become a target. Second choice, you can keep the assets frozen and under professional management until you reach the age of majority. The investments will continue to grow, protected by solid legal structures. You will receive a monthly allowance for your basic needs, but you will not have access to the total amount until you turn 18. This will give you time to mature, to study, to understand the business world before taking over everything. Third choice, you can renounce the fortune completely. Give it all up. Let the assets be transferred to philanthropic institutions or be dissolved according to the prevailing laws. This would free you from the weight of this inheritance, but it would also mean giving up all the financial security it offers. Gabriel felt the weight of the words. 3 choices, each with its consequences, each with a different path. Lucy continued. Whatever your decision, Gabriel, it must be made with a clear mind. Do not decide out of fear. Do not decide out of ambition. Decide based on who you want to become. Because money can change your life, but it cannot change who you are on the inside. Only you can do that. With love, your grandfather, Vincent. The silence that followed was profound. Gabriel looked at Maria, whose eyes were red from crying. He looked at Edward, who seemed devastated. He looked at Beatrice, Marcus, and Lucy, who awaited his reaction. Can I see the video now? Gabriel asked, his voice hoarse. Lucy nodded and took a small portable projector from her briefcase. She connected it to the tablet and projected the image onto the white wall of the room. The image flickered for a moment and then stabilized. Vincent Carter appeared on the screen. He was sitting in a leather armchair in an office with bookshelves in the background. His face was marked by age, but his eyes were alive, intelligent. He looked directly at the camera as if he were looking directly at Gabriel. Hello, my grandson. If you are seeing this, then my time has come to an end, and yours is just beginning. I want you to know that I thought of you every day. Every decision I made, every structure I created was with your future in mind. Not just your financial comfort, but your safety, your happiness, your freedom of choice. Vincent's voice was calm, paternal. Gabriel felt tears welling up again. You must be wondering why I made things so complicated. Why not just leave everything simple? The answer is that nothing involving great fortunes is simple. There is always someone trying to take advantage. Always someone who thinks they deserve more than they have. And I could not allow you to be a victim of that. Vincent took a deep breath in the recording. But I also didn't want you to become a prisoner of this fortune. Because I've seen many wealthy people destroyed by their own wealth. I've seen people lose their humanity, their empathy, their ability to feel. And I don't want that for you. So when you make your choice, think not only of what you will gain or lose, think of who you want to be. The image changed. Now documents, files, records appeared. Vincent explained as the images passed. In recent years, I discovered there was a network of people trying to access my fortune illegally, companies claiming entitlement to shares, corrupt lawyers trying to manipulate legal proceedings, even blackmail attempts involving people close to me. Gabriel saw photos, names, companies. One of them caught his eye. Carter Construction and Associates. He looked at Edward, who averted his gaze. Gabriel understood. There was more to it. Vincent continued in the recording. That's why I created layers of legal protection. I had the account legally frozen. I established security protocols. And I made a difficult decision. I asked your father to disappear, to hide. Because I knew that as long as he was around, you would be at risk. It wasn't easy. He resisted. But in the end, he accepted. Because he loved you more than his own life. Edward covered his face with his hands. Maria placed a hand on his shoulder in a comforting gesture. Gabriel felt a mixture of anger and understanding. He wanted to scream. He wanted to cry. He wanted to hug his father and at the same time push him away. The recording continued. Now, Gabriel, the moment of truth has arrived. I'm going to show you something that few people know. The true extent of the fortune, and also the real risks it brings. The screen changed again. Spreadsheets, graphs, numbers appeared. Lucy paused the video and looked at Gabriel. Do you want to see the numbers now, or would you prefer to watch the video to the end? Continue, Gabriel said. Lucy resumed playback. Vincent appeared again, now with a more serious expression. The total fortune, considering all assets, properties, shares and funds, exceeds $200 million. It is an amount that can secure your life and the lives of your children and grandchildren, but it is also an amount that attracts danger. 200 million. Gabriel felt his breath catch. It was a number he couldn't even process. Maria gasped. Edward closed his eyes. Beatrice and Marcus exchanged professional glances, but even they seemed impressed. Vincent continued, But the money is not the most important thing, Gabriel. What matters is what you will do with it. And that's why, in addition to the 3 choices I left in the letter, I want you to know something. Part of this fortune is already designated. I created a clause that reserves $20 million to be used exclusively for social projects aimed at vulnerable children. Children like you could have been if I hadn't been there. Children who need opportunities, education, hope. Gabriel felt something shift inside him. Vincent continued. This part cannot be touched for personal use. It is firewalled. It can only be used for its intended purpose, and its administration will be the responsibility of a foundation that has already been created and registered, the Vincent Carter Foundation. And you, Gabriel, will be its symbolic representative, the face of this cause. The recording ended with Vincent looking directly at the camera. Be who you want to be, my grandson, but never forget where you came from. Never forget that true greatness lies in helping others, and never allow money to turn you into someone I wouldn't recognize. I love you, Gabriel. Forever. The screen went black. The silence in the room was absolute. Gabriel let the tears roll freely now, without trying to hide them. Maria was crying softly. Edward had his eyes closed, breathing deeply, trying to control himself. Lucy carefully packed away the equipment and looked at Gabriel. Do you need some time to process all this? Gabriel wiped his face with the back of his hand. No, I want to understand everything now. I want to know everything. Lucy nodded. Then let's get to the details. She opened another envelope and spread documents on the table. These are the records of the attempts at undue appropriation. Over the last 10 years, there have been 7 attempts at legal challenges. All were blocked by the legal structures Vincent created. But that doesn't mean the people behind them have given up. They've just retreated, waiting for an opening. "Who are these people?" Gabriel asked. Lucy pointed to one of the documents. "The main one is Carter Construction and Associates. They claim to have a right to a partnership share that Vincent allegedly promised 20 years ago in an undocumented verbal agreement. It's a baseless claim, but they have resources and have hired aggressive lawyers." Gabriel looked at Edward. "Do you know this company?" Edward nodded, his voice heavy. "I do. They were your grandfather's partners in a real estate venture many years ago. The deal was successful, but Vincent left the partnership before its completion. He paid his share according to the contract, but they always felt they deserved more. When Vincent passed away, they tried to claim there was a verbal promise of a future share. It's a lie, but they are persistent." Beatrice intervened. "And there are other attempts, people claiming to be creditors, ex-employees claiming to be entitled to million-dollar compensations, even distant relatives trying to claim inheritance rights, all baseless, but all requiring legal energy to fight." Gabriel felt the weight of the responsibility. It wasn't just a fortune, it was a battle he was inheriting along with the money. "And if I choose to renounce it all?" he asked. "What happens?" Lucy answered. "If you renounce it, the assets will be distributed according to the dissolution clauses Vincent left. Most of it will go to predetermined philanthropic institutions. A portion will be designated for long-time family employees, and another part will be used to settle any potential legal claims, but that would mean giving up $200 million. And if I choose to keep it frozen until I'm 18, then the investments will remain under professional management. You will receive a monthly allowance of $10,000 for your needs, and at 18, you will take control of everything. You'll have 3 years to study, mature, and understand the financial world before assuming full responsibility. And if I choose to access it all now?" Lucy hesitated. "Then you become a target, public, visible, and vulnerable. The people who try to take this fortune will know you've taken control, and they won't hesitate to try again, perhaps in more aggressive ways." Gabriel looked at Maria. "What do you think I should do?" Maria wiped her tears and looked him in the eye. "I think you should do what your heart tells you, Gabriel. But I also think you're too young to carry this weight alone. I think you should keep it frozen. Have time to grow, to study, to prepare." Edward approached hesitant. "Gabriel, I know I have no right to an opinion, but if I can say one thing, it's that your mother is right. You have your whole life ahead of you. You don't need to carry this now." Gabriel looked at them both. Then he looked at the documents spread across the table, the numbers, the names, the silent threats. Then he made his decision. "I want to keep it frozen until I'm 18, he said, his voice firm, "but I want the 20 million designated for social projects to be released immediately. I want the Vincent Carter Foundation to start operating now. I don't want to wait 3 years to make a difference." Lucy smiled for the first time. "Your grandfather would be proud," Beatrice nodded. "I will arrange all the necessary documentation. The foundation is already registered. It just needs to be activated. We will do that within a week." Gabriel felt a weight lift from his shoulders. It wasn't the easiest decision. It wasn't the one that would give him the most power or immediate freedom. But it was the right decision. The decision Vincent expected of him. Lucy began to gather the documents. "There's one more thing, Gabriel. Vincent left a personal letter for you. It can only be opened when you are alone." She handed him a small sealed envelope with Gabriel's name written in elegant handwriting. Gabriel took the envelope and put it in his pocket. "Thank you." The meeting was ending. Beatrice and Marcus left to organize the next steps. Lucy said her goodbyes, saying she would be available for any questions. Only Gabriel, Maria, and Edward remained in the room. The silence was uncomfortable. 10 years of absence couldn't be erased with a few hours of explanations. Gabriel looked at Edward, who remained there, waiting. "I need time," Gabriel said, "to process all this, to understand what I feel." Edward nodded, his eyes welling up. "I understand, and I'll wait as long as it takes." Maria stood up and placed a hand on Gabriel's shoulder. "Let's go home, you need to rest." Gabriel agreed. They left the room together, leaving Edward behind. But before leaving, Gabriel looked back one last time. His father was there, standing, watching him go. It was a moment he had imagined 1,000 times over the years, the reunion with his father, but he never imagined it would be like this. So complex, so painful, so real. When they left the building, night had already fallen over New York City. The city lights shone brightly, the traffic was chaotic, life went on. Gabriel looked up, seeing the tall buildings disappear into the darkness. He felt small, insignificant. But at the same time, he knew he had made an important decision, a decision that would change not only his life, but the lives of many others. Maria hailed a cab and they got in. During the ride to the apartment where they lived, neither of them spoke. Gabriel looked out the window, watching the city go by. He thought of Vincent, of Edward, of everything he had discovered that day. When they arrived home, a simple 2-bedroom apartment in a modest neighborhood in Queens, Gabriel went straight to his room. He closed the door, sat on the bed, and took the envelope from his pocket. It was the letter Vincent had left for him. With slightly trembling hands, he opened the envelope and unfolded the paper. The handwriting was the same as the previous letter, but the strokes were more fragile, as if written with difficulty. My dearest Gabriel, when you read this letter, I will already be gone. But I want you to know that wherever I am, I will be proud of you. Not because of the money, not because of the fortune, but because of the heart I know you have. I raised you from a young age, I watched you grow, and I always knew you would be a good man. My greatest fear is not that you will lose the money, it's that you will lose yourself in it. That you will forget who you are, that you will stop feeling. So promise me one thing, my grandson. No matter how much you have, no matter how much you achieve, never stop looking at people, never stop feeling, because true wealth is not in the numbers of an account. It is in the ability to make a difference in someone's life. I love you forever, Grandpa Vincent. Gabriel felt the tears return. He held the letter against his chest and lay down on the bed, staring at the ceiling. He thought about everything that had happened, about everything that was yet to come, and he realized that despite all the complexity, all the pain, all the confusion, there was something good in it. There was purpose, there was meaning, there was the possibility of turning something bad into something good. He didn't know what the future would bring. He didn't know if he could handle everything that was coming. But he knew he wasn't alone. He had Maria, he had Edward, despite all the hurt, and he had Vincent's memory, guiding his steps. He fell asleep, with the letter still in his hands, exhausted, but at peace. The following days were a mix of normalcy and surrealism. Gabriel continued going to school, sitting at the same desks, talking to the same friends. But everything felt different. He carried a secret he couldn't share, a reality that no one around him could possibly understand. It was like living 2 lives at once. One, as an ordinary teenager. The other as the heir to a fortune he was still trying to comprehend. Maria noticed the change. She saw her adoptive son staring out the apartment window at the horizon, lost in thought. She saw the nights he stayed awake, reading and rereading Vincent's letter. She wanted to help, to ease the burden he carried, but she knew some things had to be processed alone. Edward had called a few times. He asked how Gabriel was. He asked to talk. Maria would answer and say that Gabriel wasn't ready yet. Edward understood, or at least he said he did. The truth was that 10 years of absence couldn't be compensated with a few phone calls. The wound was deep, and healing it would take time. A week after the meeting at the bank, Beatrice called. The documentation was ready. The Vincent Carter Foundation had been officially activated. The $20 million designated for social projects were available, and under the management of an independent administrative board. Gabriel would be the symbolic representative, the face of the foundation, but he would not have direct access to the money. It was a safeguard, a way to ensure the resources were used correctly. I need you to come to the bank to sign some documents, Beatrice said over the phone, and there's also something you need to know. The activation of the foundation has attracted attention. The press found out. Gabriel's stomach churned. The press? Yes, nothing too invasive yet. Just a few articles on business news websites. But it's likely to grow. The story of a teenager inheriting a fortune and dedicating part of it to social projects is appealing to the media. Gabriel looked at Maria, who was listening to the conversation with concern. He didn't want to be in the news. He didn't want attention. He just wanted to do the right thing without the whole world watching. But Beatrice continued. "I'll be honest with you, Gabriel. This could be a good thing. Public visibility creates an extra layer of protection. It makes it harder for malicious people to try anything against you, because any strange activity would be noticed. So, as uncomfortable as it may be, it could be an advantage." Gabriel sighed. "When do I need to be there?" "Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. "I'll be there." He hung up and looked at Maria. "This is getting too big." Maria held his hand. "I know, but you're not alone, Gabriel. I'm here, and we'll deal with this together, one step at a time." That night, Gabriel barely slept. He thought about what it would be like to be recognized on the street, to be pointed at, to be judged. He never wanted this, he never asked for it, but now it seemed inevitable. The next morning, he and Maria took the subway to Fifth Avenue. The ride was silent. Gabriel wore a cap pulled down low, trying to hide, even though he knew it. It was too early for any public recognition. It was more of a reflex, a protective instinct. When they arrived at the bank, they were greeted by Beatrice, who took them to the same meeting room. On the table was a stack of documents and a tablet with news articles open. "Before you sign, I want you to see this," Beatrice said, turning the tablet towards Gabriel. The article was from an economics news portal. The headline read, "15-year-old inherits $1 million fortune and creates social foundation in New York City." There was a photo of the bank building and a text, briefly explaining the story. It didn't mention the exact value of the fortune, but made it clear that it was significant. It also highlighted the creation of the foundation and its purpose of helping vulnerable children. Gabriel read it all in silence. He didn't like the exposure, but he admitted the article was respectful. There was no sensationalism, just facts. "Other publications have picked up the story," Beatrice continued. "Some local TV stations are also interested in covering it. There are requests for interviews, but you are not obligated to grant any. We can keep everything at an institutional level. The foundation can have official spokespeople. You don't have to appear if you don't want to." "I don't want to," Gabriel said immediately. Beatrice nodded. "Then we'll arrange that. We'll hire a communications advisor to deal with the press. You will be protected." Gabriel felt a sense of relief. At least he could control that. He spent the next hour signing documents, terms of responsibility, declarations of awareness, authorizations for the foundation's transactions. Maria signed as his legal guardian, confirming each step. Beatrice explained each document patiently, ensuring Gabriel understood exactly what he was signing. When they finished, Beatrice clasped her hands on the table and looked seriously at Gabriel. "Now I need to tell you something. Yesterday we received a legal notice. Carter Construction and Associates has filed a new lawsuit challenging the asset structure. They claim that with the activation of the foundation, there has been a movement of assets, and that this constitutes misappropriation of resources that, according to them, should be in dispute." Maria turned pale. "But that doesn't make sense. The foundation was created by Vincent before he died. It's all documented. Yes, and that's why the lawsuit is baseless. But legally we have to respond. Lucy is already handling it. The prediction is that it will be dismissed in a few months, but I wanted you to know, Gabriel, because there might be more news about this, and we don't want you finding out from the press." Gabriel felt anger rising. Why don't these people just give up? "Because they believe they are entitled to the money," Beatrice replied, "and because they are driven by greed. But you have the law on your side, and a legal team that won't let them take anything." The meeting ended, and Gabriel and Maria left the bank. Outside, the sun was shining brightly. Fifth Avenue was as busy as ever, with people walking briskly, street vendors shouting promotions, and street musicians playing for spare change. Gabriel looked at it all and felt a disconnect. He was part of that world, but at the same time he wasn't anymore. He had responsibilities that most people there couldn't even imagine. Maria noticed his expression. "Let's get some coffee, talk a little." Gabriel nodded. They walked to a nearby diner, a simple place with formica tables and plastic chairs. They ordered 2 coffees with milk and a cheese roll. They sat at a table in the back, "How are you feeling?" Maria asked. Gabriel stirred his coffee, watching the foam. Confused, scared, angry, all at the same time. "It's normal, Gabriel. You've been through a lot in a short time. You found out your father is alive. You found out you have a fortune. You found out there are people trying to take that fortune from you. It's a lot to process. I know, but it's not just that. I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't want to be rich. I didn't want to be in the news. I just wanted to live, to study, to have a normal life." Maria held his hand across the table. "I know, and I'm sorry you have to deal with this, but I also want you to know that I'm proud of you, of the decision you made, to keep the fortune frozen, to activate the foundation. You could have chosen to take it all and do whatever you wanted, but you chose the harder path, the right path." Gabriel felt his eyes sting. "I just did what I thought Grandpa Vincent would have wanted, and that's exactly why he would be proud." They stayed there for a few more minutes talking about simple things, about school, about Gabriel's friends, about their routine. It was comforting to get back to basics, even if just for a little while. When they got back home, someone was waiting at the building's entrance. Edward. He was leaning against the wall, hands in his pockets, an apprehensive look on his face. When he saw Gabriel and Maria, he straightened up. "I know you said you needed time," Edward began, looking at Gabriel. "But I couldn't stay away. I wanted to know how you are. If you're okay." Gabriel stopped a few feet away. He didn't know what to say. Part of him wanted to run and hug his father. Another part wanted to scream, to let out all the pent-up anger. In the end, he was paralyzed, unable to do either. Maria intervened. "Edward, it's not a good time." "I know, but—" Gabriel interrupted him. "You want to know how I am? I'm trying to understand all of this, trying to understand why you didn't trust me, why you didn't tell me the truth sooner, why you let me believe for 10 years that I had been abandoned." Edward closed his eyes as if each word were a stab. "I had no choice, Gabriel. If you had known, you would have tried to find me, and that would have put you in danger. I couldn't allow that. You could have trusted me. You were 5 years old. How could I trust a 5-year-old child to keep a secret that could cost him his life?" Gabriel felt his throat tighten. He knew Edward was right, but it still hurt. Because 10 years was a long time. 10 years of lonely birthdays. 10 years without a father. 10 years carrying a void that he now discovered was a necessary lie, but a lie nonetheless. "I understand why you did what you did," Gabriel said, his voice trembling. "But that doesn't erase the pain. It doesn't erase the years. I need time, Dad. Time to process. Time to forgive." Edward nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I'll wait, as long as it takes." He took a step back and began to walk away. But before turning the corner, he looked back one last time. Gabriel was there at the building's entrance, watching. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and in that moment Gabriel saw something he didn't expect. He saw regret, he saw pain, he saw love, and he realized that despite everything, Edward was just a man who had tried to protect his son the only way he knew how, even if it meant sacrificing himself. In the following days, Gabriel's routine began to change. The foundation started operating officially. An office was rented in Midtown Manhattan in a modest commercial building. A team was hired, social workers, educators, administrators, all coordinated by Beatrice and Lucy, who ensured that every penny was used correctly. Gabriel was invited to the inauguration. He was reluctant, but Maria convinced him. "You don't have to give interviews, you don't have to be in the photos, but you need to be there, because this foundation exists because of you, because of the decision you made." On the day of the inauguration, Gabriel wore a simple dress shirt and jeans. Maria helped him fix his hair. They took a cab to the location. When they arrived, a few people were already gathered. The foundation's team, Beatrice, Lucy, some representatives from partner NGOs, and to Gabriel's surprise, Edward. He was in the corner of the room observing. When he saw Gabriel, he just nodded, respecting the distance. Gabriel nodded back. It was a start, a small one, but it was a start. The inauguration was simple. Beatrice gave a speech about the Foundation's mission, about Vincent's legacy, about the importance of helping vulnerable children. She mentioned Gabriel, but without exposing him too much, respecting his request for privacy. After the speech, Gabriel was introduced to the team members, dedicated people who believed in the cause, who were there not for the money but for the purpose. He spoke with a social worker, named Deborah, who talked passionately about the projects they planned to implement. Scholarships, vocational workshops, psychological support, all designed to provide real opportunities. Gabriel listened to everything attentively, and for the first time since discovering the inheritance, he felt he had made the right choice, because that money was no longer sitting in an account. It was being used to change lives, to create opportunities, to transform stories. At the end of the inauguration, when everyone was leaving, Gabriel was left alone in the room for a moment. He looked around, seeing the white walls with the Foundation's logo, seeing the new computers on the desks, seeing the future that place represented. Edward appeared at the door. "May I come in?" Gabriel nodded. Edward walked over to him, maintaining a respectful distance. "Your grandfather would be proud," Edward said. "I hope so." "Don't hope, be sure. You did something that many adults wouldn't have the courage to do. You gave up immediate power to build something greater. That's greatness, Gabriel." Gabriel looked at his father. He saw the wrinkles around his eyes, the grey strands in his hair, the signs of 10 years living in hiding, and he realized that Edward had also sacrificed, had also suffered, had also paid a price. "I'm still angry," Gabriel said, being honest, "but I'm also trying to understand, trying to accept that you did what you thought was right." "That's all I ask," Edward replied. "Time, and the chance to get to know the incredible man my son is becoming." Gabriel felt something move within him. It wasn't complete forgiveness, but it was a beginning, the first crack in the wall he had built around his heart. "Maybe we could get coffee one of these days," Edward smiled, his eyes shining. "I'd love that." They left the Foundation together. Maria was waiting for them outside. Seeing the two of them walking side by side, she smiled. She said nothing. She just smiled. Because she knew the healing had begun. That night, back at the apartment, Gabriel received a call from Beatrice. "We have a situation," she said, her voice tense. "Carter Construction has intensified their efforts. They've hired a public relations team and are trying to tarnish the Foundation's image in the media. They're claiming the Foundation is a way to divert assets that should be under legal dispute." Gabriel felt the anger return. "But that's a lie." "I know, and we're going to prove it. Lucy is already preparing a strong legal response. We'll also issue a public statement refuting the allegations. But you need to be prepared. There may be more attacks, more attempts to destabilize you." Gabriel took a deep breath. "I'm prepared." "Good, because we're going to fight, and we're going to win." He hung up and stared at his phone. He thought of Vincent. He thought of everything his grandfather had prepared. He thought of the risks he had foreseen, and he understood that this battle was just beginning. But he also understood that he wasn't alone. He had Maria. He had Edward, slowly reconnecting. He had Beatrice and Lucy. He had an entire team fighting by his side. And most importantly, he had a purpose. Something bigger than himself. Something worth fighting for. In the following days, the situation escalated. Carter Construction gave interviews to newspapers, claiming they were being wronged. They tried to paint Vincent as a dishonest businessman who had deceived them. They tried to suggest that Gabriel was just a tool being used to protect illegitimate assets. The response came quickly. Lucy organized a press conference where she presented all the documents proving Vincent's integrity. Signed contracts, payments made, proof that there were no outstanding debts. The press gave it extensive coverage, and the narrative began to shift. Public opinion sided with Gabriel. People on social media defended the Foundation. They praised the teenager's decision to use part of the fortune to help others. Heavy criticism fell on Carter Construction, which came to be seen as a greedy company trying to take advantage of a young man. The pressure worked. 2 weeks later, Carter Construction withdrew the lawsuit. They issued a statement saying that after reviewing the documents, they recognized there was no basis for the challenge. It was a victory, a small but significant one. Gabriel received the news with relief, but also with caution, because he knew this wouldn't be the last attempt. There would always be someone trying to take advantage. There would always be a new battle. But he was learning to deal with it, one step at a time. That night, he sat with Maria and Edward in the apartment's living room. The three of them together for the first time in 10 years. They talked about the future, about the foundation's plans, about Gabriel's life, and slowly the wound began to heal. It wasn't perfect. There was still hurt, there was still pain, but there was also hope. Hope that, despite everything, they could be a family again. Not in the way they were before, but in a new way, stronger, more aware. Gabriel looked at Maria and Edward and realized something important. He hadn't just inherited money. He had inherited a second chance. The chance to turn pain into purpose, loss into gain, darkness into light. And he was determined to take that chance, not for himself, but for all those who depended on him, for all the children the foundation could help, for all the lives that could be transformed. Because in the end, it didn't matter how much money he had. It mattered what he did with it. And Gabriel was determined to make a difference. 6 months had passed since that day at the bank. 6 months that had completely changed Gabriel's life. He still attended the same school, still lived in the same apartment with Maria, still woke up early and took the crowded subway to Midtown. But inside he was a different person, more mature, more aware, more determined. The Vincent Carter Foundation was running at full steam. It had already helped over 200 vulnerable children. Scholarships were granted. Vocational workshops were held every week. Psychological support was being offered to entire families. The results were beginning to show. Children who had dropped out of school were back to studying. Teenagers with no prospects began to dream about the future. And all of this was because of a decision Gabriel had made. He visited the foundation every Friday after school. He talked with the team. He met the children being helped. He listened to their stories, stories of overcoming, of struggle, of hope. And each story reinforced his certainty that he had made the right choice. During one of these visits, Gabriel met Lucas, a 10-year-old boy who studied at a precarious public school on the outskirts of the city. Lucas was brilliant. He had excellent grades. He loved math. He dreamed of becoming an engineer. But his family couldn't afford proper school supplies. The foundation granted Lucas a full scholarship to a quality private school. It also provided uniforms, materials, transportation, everything he needed to have a real chance at success. When Gabriel first spoke to Lucas, the boy's eyes were shining with emotion. "Thank you," Lucas said, his voice thin. "Thank you for believing in me." Gabriel felt a lump in his throat. "You don't have to thank me. You deserve this opportunity, and you're going to do amazing things." Lucas smiled, a wide, genuine smile full of hope. And in that moment, Gabriel understood the true meaning of wealth. It wasn't in the numbers of a bank account. It was there, in that smile, in that hope, in that life being transformed. His relationship with Edward was also evolving. It wasn't easy. There were moments of discomfort, moments of heavy silence, moments when Gabriel still felt the pain of 10 years of absence. But there were also good moments, deep conversations, shared laughter, memories being built. Edward had found a job at a small accounting firm, nothing grand but honest. He rented a simple apartment near where Gabriel and Maria lived. He visited regularly. He took Gabriel out for pizza on Saturdays. He helped with homework. He tried to make up for lost time, even though he knew he never fully could. One Saturday afternoon, Gabriel and Edward were sitting in a pizzeria in the neighborhood. Edward ate slowly, watching his son. Gabriel noticed his gaze and looked up. "What is it?" Edward smiled. "Nothing. I was just thinking about how you've grown, how you've become a good man." Gabriel shrugged. I had good examples. Maria, you, even from afar, and Grandpa Vincent. Edward grew serious. I know there's still hurt. I know I can't erase the past. But I want you to know that, even from afar, I thought about you every day. Every birthday, every Christmas, every achievement I imagined you were having, I was there in my mind, cheering for you. Gabriel felt his eyes sting. I know, Dad. And I'm trying to forgive completely, trying to understand that you did what you thought was right. That's all I can ask for. They finished their pizza in silence. But it was a comfortable silence, the kind of silence that exists between people who understand each other, even without words. Meanwhile, Gabriel's life continued to take on shapes he never imagined. The foundation began to receive recognition, awards from social organizations, mentions in major newspapers, invitations to participate in charity events. Gabriel declined most of them. He didn't want to be the center of attention. He wanted the focus to be on the work, not on him. But there was one invitation he couldn't refuse. A public school in Queens, where children from low-income families studied, asked for someone from the foundation to give a motivational speech. Deborah, the social worker, suggested Gabriel go. You're their age, they'll relate to you, and your story could be inspiring. Gabriel was reluctant, but Maria encouraged him. You don't have to tell everything, but you can share the essence. You can say you believe in opportunities. That? You believe in transformation. That could make a difference in someone's life. Gabriel agreed. On the scheduled day, he wore simple clothes and went to the school. The principal greeted him warmly and led him to the auditorium, where about 300 students were gathered. Gabriel felt nervousness take over. He had never spoken in public to so many people, but when he got on stage and looked at those young faces, many with tired expressions, others with suspicious glances, some with hope in their eyes, he felt he had to speak. He had to say something that could make a difference. He started by talking a little about himself. He said he also came from a simple family, that he had also faced difficulties, that he also had moments when he thought he wouldn't make it. He didn't mention the inheritance. He didn't mention the millions. He only spoke about choices, about how every decision we make shapes who we become, about how it's possible to turn pain into purpose. I know many of you are going through difficult things, Gabriel said, his voice a little shaky at first but gaining strength. I know there are days when it seems like nothing will get better, that the world is against you. But I want to tell you one thing. You have more power than you imagine. The power to choose, the power to fight, the power to transform your stories. He spoke about the importance of education, about how knowledge was the one thing no one could take from them, about how every book read, every class attended, every effort made was a brick in the construction of their future. And when you get opportunities, when you manage to grow, don't forget where you came from. Don't forget the people left behind. Because true greatness isn't about reaching the top alone. It's about pulling others up with you. When he finished, there was silence. Gabriel thought he had failed, that his words hadn't made sense. But then one student started clapping, another joined in, and in seconds the entire auditorium was applauding. Gabriel felt tears threaten to fall, but he held them back. He smiled and waved. After the speech, several students came to talk to him, to thank him, to share their own stories. A girl named Beatrice said she had been thinking about dropping out of school, but after hearing Gabriel, she decided to continue. A boy named Raphael said he wanted to be like him when he grew up, someone who made a difference. Gabriel went home that day with a full heart. He told Maria about the experience, about how touching it was to see the impact that simple words could have. Maria smiled, proud. You are becoming exactly what Vincent hoped for, not just someone who has money, but someone who uses what they have to build bridges. The following weeks were intense. The foundation expanded its activities. It opened a new branch in the Bronx, hired more professionals, increased the number of children served, and Gabriel followed everything closely, always present, always attentive. But there was something that still bothered him, a letter. The last one Vincent had left. He found it by chance, hidden among the documents Lucy had delivered months ago. It was a different letter, more personal, deeper. Gabriel read it alone, in his room, on a quiet night. My dearest Gabriel, if you are reading this letter, it means you have already been through the worst, you have faced the battles, you have made the difficult decisions. And I hope, from the bottom of my heart, that you have chosen the path of good. I am not writing to give you more instructions. I am writing to tell you a story, the story of how I learned the true value of things. Vincent wrote about his poor childhood, about growing up with nothing, working since he was a child to help his family, about how he built his fortune from scratch, brick by brick, deal by deal, and about how, at the peak of his success, he almost lost everything. Not the money, but himself. There was a time when I thought money was everything, Vincent wrote, that it defined me, that it was the measure of my worth, and because of that, I almost lost the people I loved. I almost lost your grandfather, my son. I almost lost my humanity. It took a great loss for me to understand that money is just a tool, and like any tool it can build or destroy. It depends on who wields it. The letter continued, and Gabriel read every word attentively. That is why I structured everything for you the way I did. Because I didn't want you to make the same mistakes I did. I wanted you to learn early on that wealth is not about how much you have, it's about how much you give, how much you transform, how much of a legacy you leave behind. At the end of the letter, Vincent wrote something that was etched in Gabriel's heart. If one day you lose your way, my grandson, if the money starts to change who you are, remember this. A man's worth is not measured by what he accumulates, but by what he shares, by the love he gives, by the lives he touches, by the good he leaves in the world. Always be that person, Gabriel. Always be who your heart tells you to be. I love you eternally, Vincent. Gabriel carefully folded the letter and put it in a small wooden box where he kept his most precious things. That letter was more than words. It was a legacy, a philosophy of life, a guide for moments of doubt. In the following months, Gabriel remained true to this philosophy. He continued studying. He continued to be an ordinary teenager in many ways, but he also continued to be an agent of change. The foundation kept growing. New projects were implemented. More lives were transformed. A year after that day at the bank, Gabriel turned 16. Maria organized a small party at home. She invited only close people. Edward was there, some friends from school, the foundation's team. And to Gabriel's surprise, Lucas appeared with his family, the boy who had received the scholarship a year ago. Lucas ran to Gabriel and hugged him. I passed the year with excellent grades, he announced proudly. I'm going to study engineering when I grow up, and one day I'm going to create my own foundation to help other kids like me. Gabriel felt his chest tighten with emotion. I know you will, and I'll be there to support you. The party was simple but full of meaning. There was no luxury, no ostentation, just people who cared about each other, sharing moments, building memories. At the end of the night, when everyone had gone home, Gabriel stood on the apartment's balcony with Maria and Edward. The three of them looked at the city below, the twinkling lights, the constant movement. Are you happy? Maria asked. Gabriel thought for a moment. I am. Not in the way I imagined I would be, but I am. Edward placed a hand on his son's shoulder. Your grandfather would be proud, very proud. Gabriel nodded. I hope so. They stood there in silence as the night deepened, and Gabriel realized something important. He didn't need millions to be happy. He didn't need mansions or luxury cars. He just needed this. People he loved by his side, a purpose that moved him, a life with meaning. The months continued to pass. Gabriel followed his routine, school, foundation, family. And slowly life found a balance. It wasn't perfect. There were challenges. There were difficult days. But there were also joys, achievements, transformations. One day, almost 2 years after his trip to the bank, Gabriel was walking home from school when he saw a scene that made him stop. A child, no more than 7 years old, was sitting on the sidewalk with a torn notebook trying to do his homework. The backpack beside him was old, with holes. His feet were bare. His gaze was focused, despite everything. Gabriel felt something stir within him. That scene could have been him. It could have been Lucas, it could have been any child. The foundation was helping. He approached slowly and crouched down beside the boy. "Hi, everything okay?" The boy looked up, suspicious. "Yeah." "Doing homework?" "Trying. But it's hard without the right books." Gabriel opened his backpack and took out his own supplies. He took out new notebooks, pens, pencils. He placed everything next to the boy. "You can have these. And if you need help with your homework, there are people who can help you. There's a foundation nearby that helps kids. I can give you the address." The boy looked at the supplies, his eyes wide. "For real? For real." Gabriel wrote the foundation's address on a piece of paper and handed it to him. He also left a small note that said, "Don't give up. You are capable of amazing things." The boy held the paper carefully, as if it were the most precious thing in the world. "Thank you, mister. You're welcome. And remember, study, because knowledge is the one thing no one can take from you." Gabriel stood up and continued walking. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. He knew he had planted a seed. And seeds, when watered with care, grow and bear fruit. That night, Gabriel told Maria and Edward about what he had done. They both smiled. "You are becoming exactly who you were meant to be," Maria said. "Not just someone with resources, but someone who makes a difference." In the following years, Gabriel continued on this path. At 18, when he finally gained full access to the fortune, he changed nothing in his life. He continued to live in the same apartment. He continued to study. He continued to be who he had always been. But he also expanded the foundation's actions. He opened new branches, expanded to other states, helped thousands of children get opportunities they never would have had. And always, always he kept his feet on the ground, because he knew that money was just a tool, and that the true value was in the lives transformed, in the genuine smiles, in the stories of overcoming. Gabriel became an ethical entrepreneur. He invested in businesses that created jobs, that promoted sustainable development, that respected people and the environment. And he always allocated a portion of the profits to social causes. Over time, his story began to inspire others, young entrepreneurs who saw in him an example of how it was possible to be successful without losing one's humanity, how it was possible to have money without being consumed by it. And Gabriel never forgot where he came from. He never forgot that day at the bank when he was just 15 with an impossible decision before him. He never forgot Vincent's words. He never forgot the pain he transformed into purpose. Years later, when he was an adult, Gabriel returned to that same bank on Fifth Avenue. He entered the marble lobby and looked around. Everything seemed smaller now, less intimidating. He walked to the counter and asked to speak with Beatrice, who was now a vice president of the institution. When she appeared, she smiled upon seeing him. "Gabriel, it's been so long." They talked for a few minutes. Gabriel told her about the foundation's progress, about the thousands of lives transformed, about future projects. Beatrice listened attentively and at the end said something Gabriel would never forget. "You know, when I saw you that day, so many years ago, I thought it would be just another account, another procedure. But you proved it was so much more. You proved that choices matter, that character matters, that humanity matters, and that is more valuable than any fortune." Gabriel smiled. "I learned from the best." He left the bank and walked down Fifth Avenue. The sun was shining brightly. People hurried past. The city kept its frantic pace. But Gabriel was at peace because he knew he had made the right choice. Not the easiest one, but the right one. And as he looked back at everything he had built, at all the lives he had touched, he realized something fundamental. The true wealth was never in the $200 million frozen in an account. It was in the ability to feel, to love, to give, to transform. Because in the end, we are not defined by what we accumulate. We are defined by what we share, by the love we leave behind, by the good we do. And Gabriel had chosen to be defined by that, by a life with purpose, by an existence that transcended the material and touched the eternal. And that choice, that decision made by a 15-year-old boy in a meeting room, would echo for generations, inspiring, transforming, showing that it is possible indeed to be rich without losing one's soul. It is possible to have power without abusing it. It is possible to build an empire while keeping humanity intact. Gabriel Carter was not just the heir to a fortune, he was the heir to a legacy, Vincent's legacy, the legacy of making a difference. And he honored that legacy every day of his life because he understood from a young age that true greatness is not in what you have, it's in what you do with what you have. And Gabriel made his choice, the choice to feel, the choice to transform, the choice to be above all human. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope Gabriel's story has touched your heart. If you were moved by this journey of transformation, courage, and the choices that define who we are, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments which moment marked you the most. Every day we bring intense stories like this one, which reveal the deepest side of the human soul, which show that our decisions shape our destiny, and that true wealth lies in making a difference in someone's life. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode, with another story that will stir your emotions and make you reflect on what truly matters in life.